Alrighty. So good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us today for the security forum with Stickley and Vonahai. As you may know, corporate data does a lot of things. Phone systems is something you may worked with us in the past, but security is definitely top of mind for everybody. So with the times, we have evolved as well. So we hope you find today's forum interesting as we walk through today. If you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We will also have a Q&A session at the end for anyone that does have active questions. So we'll just do a quick agenda so that everybody is aware what we're going through today. I am Christy Sturgeon with Corporate Data and Voice. We also have the team here, Rachel, Kelly, and Joe. We also have Nick on the line with us here too. So thank you everyone for joining us. We also have Larry Snodgrass from Stickley on Security and Jason Wells from Vonahai. Larry will be taking over next. He'll be doing a quick intro of both of those teams, and then Jason will take it over to give us some fun demonstration and review on pen testing. Larry will take it back over, do some domain assurance and end user phishing discussions, and then we'll leave it open for Q&A at the end. Larry, feel free to take it over.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me share here real quickly with you folks. And guys, we're going to go through 3 services here today that in 30 minutes that normally we take about 30 minutes for each. So it will be very abbreviated. If you do have additional questions or want a deeper dive into any of these, obviously, please feel free to reach out to your corporate data and voice team and we can set that up. We're very happy to do so. But first off, for those of you who don't know us, Stickley on Security, the name I always have you Google is Jim Stickley. He's generally considered one of the top 5 or so legal hackers in the country. He does operate as the security expert for companies like Norton. You can see him on NBC all the time in the Rosen reports, actually uncovering cyber crimes. He gets paid a lot to break into companies. As a matter of fact, he has a 100% success ratio of any company that's ever paid him to do a critical data breach. He has been able to do so, and that includes over 3,000 banks and the Pentagon a couple times. So we're going to be talking to you a little bit today about some ways you can help spot these guys that operate like a Jim Stickley does. Starting off with our very strategic partner, Vonahai, who we work with on automated network pen testing solutions. You're going to love this conversation around this service. If any of you have been using pen testing, if you haven't, it's a great way to go in and see what your security posture is today, where your potential vulnerabilities are, and more importantly, how much those can be exploited and what you would need to do to fix those. Typically, that's a very manual process. It's going to take you, 3+, 8+ weeks to get done. This is a service where you can get 12 of those similar tests that are auditor ready in about 3 days instead of 3 weeks. And it's going to be about 50% of the cost. Easy to use, easy to schedule on your time. So we're going to kick it off with that before we get into some employee training services that we have available to you, as well as domain monitoring service, which is a primary tactic that people use for spear phishing. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and let him share with you all about the automated network pen testing solution from Vonahai. Jason, can you take over from here and let us move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I got a quick little PowerPoint presentation to kind of talk about what we do, how we do it, the automation, the value of that, and then I can jump into a quick demonstration of how to use the platform. So share my screen here and pull up the slideshow here. So and as Larry mentioned, we're focused on network penetration testing. So our company, penetration testing typically done by a security consultant. Our founder's got about 10 years of experience doing network penetration testing as a manual service. And so has essentially been able to take his manual process, build it into automation, and build it into a platform that we can, take to market and allow, end users the ability to log in, schedule assessments, and do their, view results within the platform, and get access to, a full scale penetration test through automation. And we'll talk about the value in a second here. Really quickly, why do you need a penetration test? So, first of all, for most organizations, it's required to meet compliance and or cyber insurance provisions. So, whether you're in an industry that needs, and requires you to do penetration testing to meet that compliance requirement, and we're starting to see a major surge in cyber liability insurance providers requiring network penetration testing over and above, the typical vulnerability assessment. So, a vulnerability assessment, it's going to analyze the network for known vulnerabilities that may exist out there. But the penetration test is actually going to replicate an attacker and attempt to exploit those vulnerabilities on your network, try to gain access to the network. And then from there, try to move across the network to see, try to gain access to sensitive data, right? So the output of what we're doing is showing you if an attacker attacked your network, where would the vulnerabilities exist that they could exploit? And then ultimately, could they gain access to sensitive data? If they can, how do you fix those things to prevent them from doing that? And as I mentioned, so typically it's done in a manual approach. We have been able to build all this, into, full automation and deliver the same results that you would get from an actual, a manual service from an outsourced consultant. And so the value of automation over the manual approach, right? First, obviously, we can drastically reduce the cost. So, we typically cost, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of what you would pay an outsourced consultant to do one test. And then give you the ability to do up to monthly testing at that same cost. So delivering, monthly testing for 50% the cost of a one-time test with another organization. And the value in that continuous testing is that, there are new vulnerabilities that exist, and come into play that, if you've only done it once, a year, you've got that full year where you're waiting to get that next test. You have changes on your network, so you'd want to test there. And then ultimately, too, if you're fixing things on the network, you want to prove that you fixed them, right? So run another test to prove that you fixed it. The other thing I'd point out, on a manual approach is that it can take, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks from start to finish to get the test scheduled, to get it performed, to get the reports delivered. And so with our platform, you're able to do that, sign up today, get the test kicked off today, get results in the platform, in real time, and then get the PDF reports within 2 business days. And then just lastly, it is built by hackers, right? So our pen test team is not necessarily pen test anymore. They're continuing to add to the platform to stay on top of things that are happening out in the real world, so that every time we run a test, it's going to have the most, the latest vulnerabilities, the latest exploits, the latest tools built into the platform. So let me pull up here, and I'm going to show you the platform itself, right? So the platform, again, it's a place really you're just going to log in, schedule assessments, review results. Our platform, everything related to the pen test is done on the back end by us, and you don't have to, you don't have to be a security expert. You don't have to have people on staff that understand pen testing, right? So it's really just a way to schedule and view those results. So you really just log in, hit schedule. It'll show you, a 7-step process to do the schedule. So you'll decide, do you want to run an external test or an internal test? If you run an internal, let me take a step back. So on the internal side, you will need to install a virtual machine somewhere on your network. It's a small machine. It can be done on like a Raspberry Pi, a workstation, a laptop, something like that. But it allows us to connect into the network to do the internal test. So, it usually takes maybe 20, 30 minutes. Our team can support the installation of that as well. So if you do select the internal test for the schedule, it'll ask you to connect that agent to that schedule. The second step is to determine when can we test. We do recommend business hours. We're doing certain types of tests that do need network traffic. At this point, we've done like 6,500 assessments in the past 2 years on the platform. Haven't caused a network issue, so it's easy to, I mean, it's safe to run during business hours. Having said that, you can come in here, so deselect business hours, run it out after hours if you want to do that. As I mentioned, we can, test up to monthly, so you can set a schedule and pick the days that you want to start at each month. You can do one-off test as well, so we can pick today, run it today. This fourth step is to enter the IP addresses that you want to target. You can do that through an import. You can put ranges in. You can copy and paste individual IPs. If you use a range, you can exclude IPs from that range as well to exclude it from the scope. There's some notification settings, so you can get notified of certain activities within the test. You can get notified when there's a new finding from a pen test perspective. And then if you run a vulnerability scan with the pen test, you can also get the vulnerability results and notification of that as well. Finally, there's a summary that help let you know what you picked before you complete it, and it will tell you based off of what you've picked when you can start that, when you can expect the test to start. And then lastly, we do ask you to acknowledge that you're authorized to test the IPs within the schedule as well. So when you hit finish and complete, it'll run on the schedule. You'll be able to track it in real time, right? So, they'll show up here in current assessments. You click into the assessment, and it's going to track the progress over time of that test. So you'll know what phase it's in. It'll populate the activity log here, so you know the activities that are happening in real time on the network. You'll populate the charts and graphs. You'll get an overall severity rating. And then at the bottom here, you'll see the actual pen test findings. So each finding will show up here. You'll see the severity of it. You'll be able to click in, see the details. So what's the description of it? How critical is it? The root cause of it, the potential security impact of it, and then ultimately the recommendation on how to fix it. And then the evidence, right? So in a pen test, we're always going to have evidence to prove the findings. So here we've got a screenshot. It'll show you, we found a password document on the network share. So there's a screenshot to prove that result. And that's what the results do look like in the platform. Once the results are delivered, once the test completes, we will give ourselves a couple of business days to review the report before we release it. Once we do release those reports, you'll get access to the executive summary as well as the technical report. We also give you the activity log, supporting evidence. You can download it into a CSV file as well. And we can send you these sample reports so that you can kind of dig into those as well. The last thing I like to show you is that we do have a help center. You can log in, take a look at, get walkthrough guides for everything within the platform, how to use it. There's a support request mechanism that'll allow you to connect to the support team. So whether you need help with, setting up, the scanner or, kicking off a scan, anything like that, or if you have questions related to the report itself, contact the support team. We'll answer those questions and give you feedback as well. Larry, I think that's it on my side. I can kind of pass it back over to you now.
All right, thank you, Jason. So I'm just going to finish up with here for you guys a couple other quick services that are very simple, but very important to security for your company. So the first of these that I was asked to chat with you folks about is actually our training platform that we have. So the number one way that Jim Stickley and pretty much any other hacker in the world is going to get to your company is through employee error. They click on something, it can be physical security, any number of things. And it can be a bit of a challenge to keep folks up to date on what's going on and what kind of some major things to look for and make it easy for them to understand. So we've got a really nice, fully automated platform that you can use that all you have to do is upload the users with like a CSV file or one by one, or you can even link it to an Active Directory. And then you don't have to do anything. It's just going to run to where every single quarter you'll get a quick new training that goes out of something that's relevant to what's going on right now. And it's easy to retain, easy for your employees to do. These are not college course things. You're not trying to give them technical certifications. You want to be able to have them just grasp it and be able to put it into use. And we'll cover a full scope of things, something that's relevant that's going on right now. And you want to do these ongoing throughout the year because the cybersecurity criminals just change too often, right? So, for example, when COVID-19 happened, right, we rolled out a training saying you're working from home now. Here's some things you might want to, pay attention to. Maybe, you don't want to be connecting with your mobile phone to your corporate IT network. Even if you have a VPN, doesn't matter. If you streamed Hulu on there, maybe you watched Disney when they were compromised, and you've got a side load on your phone now and you don't know it, and you've just given a secure tunnel for bad data through your VPN back to your corporate IT network. We'll cover physical security, right? I'm working out of a hotel right now as we speak. People will leave their laptop unlocked. They'll leave printed out proprietary information, financial information. Jim found a tool on the internet for about $10, lets you into any card key reading room of any Marriott in the country inside of about 10 seconds. They walk in, download malware on your laptop if you left it unlocked, or maybe take some pictures of your proprietary information. They're in and out in a minute and a half, and you never know how you were robbed. So it's a very simple platform. They come in, we'll use best practices. We always start out with a little video on this. It will be Jim Stickley himself that'll do it. And because some people will actually learn better by video. If they try to skip ahead, they'll get a little slap on the wrist. We will typically then do a summarized documentation because some people do better with reading. Can't guarantee they're going to read everything, but we try to summarize it so if they scroll through, they're going to pick up something. And at the bottom, there will be a checkbox. I've already done this course, so the box isn't here, but there will be a checkbox. Studies show if you have them do that, they will retain something. And then we'll typically do a gamification or a quick other summary video before we move on to the quizzes. And again, the quizzes are not meant to be tough. This is not a college course. You're not trying to break any courses or certify people. You want your people to easily get the information and put it into practice. And that's why Jim is so good, because he's on TV all the time. He's used to speaking to the masses on a topic of cybersecurity to where they can understand it and go, oh, yeah, I get how to do that. You can miss up to 3, still pass. I just clicked through, so I missed a whole bunch. It'll give you a last little bit of education on what you missed and why. Obviously, if you missed it, you have to go back and retake it. And then Christy mentioned as well, along with this, you will actually get a full phishing simulation service as well. So every single month, every employee will get a randomized phishing simulation. So they'll get a different one at a different time. So they don't just talk to each other and actually filter the things out. Hey, did you get Larry's phishing email today, right? So they'll get this. We will typically see an 18 to 24% click rate on these things, believe it or not, when you start, enroll at the program. And then after a quarter or two of training, that'll usually drop down to under 1%. Believe it or not, the number one offenders out there are actually the C-level suite. Our number 2 offenders of clicking on things is actually the IT department. So everybody needs training and needs to keep on their toes anyway. If they do click on something, they'll get a notification, oh, no, you messed up. And then the service will automatically, if they do that, assign them a related training course within 24 hours. It'll be like a quick little 5-minute thing. You will automatically get summarized reporting, as well as you can go into the portal, back-end portal, and you'll be able to pull down complete customized reporting, including, by employee, by course, by phishing simulation. You can use that for reviews. You can also use that for your cybersecurity insurance policies, because the majority of those will not pay out unless you can actually point that you've got, or will not pay out in full unless you can point to the fact that you've got ongoing training on that. So that's a very straightforward service for you guys. There's also weekly e-newsletters that'll go out. That's just like news articles that you can read on everything that's the latest and greatest that's happening, just to keep your people informed. But I did want to go on to, since we're talking about employees getting compromised, the number one way that folks are doing that on the criminal side of the world now is actually through something called spear phishing or targeted phishing. And the main way that we do that is using domains that are very similar to your domain, because we can actually stage those in such a way that we can defeat virtually any email filter that's out there, because the algorithms are based upon, and we know that. And in point of fact, you actually have 86% of all the companies that are out there have had some sort of a compromise due to spear phishing. Now, that might have been something small that wasn't consequential to your company. It might have been something huge, but the majority of you have had something happen, whether you realize it or not. And 1 in 4 of these attacks are being accomplished doing what I'm speaking to here today. And really all we're doing with these domains, when we have a lookalike domain, is we're trying to defeat the email filter system. So maybe you have Palo Alto, maybe you have Barracuda, something of that nature. And they're going to look at behavior algorithms, which are your malware, what's called your malware command and control services, or what we do, which are targeted phishing attacks, which defeat the reputation algorithms. Now, the behavior algorithms are a little easier to catch, right? So that's like the SolarWinds attacks you might have read about in the news. They bought out a whole bunch of domains. They went out, they attacked the world. You were able to see a huge spike in traffic when that happened, right? So the red flags go up. But with a targeted spear phishing attack with reputation algorithms, hard to catch it. It's a real simple process. I just identify a target, right? So maybe it's corporate data and voice. And then I go out and I purchase a lookalike domain, something that's just like a character off. And actually, they'll buy blocks of these. And there's companies that age these already for you. You don't even have to do it yourself. And you can buy them from them if you're a criminal. And then I'm going to make sure that it looks good on the DMARCs, all the back-end things these reputation algorithms are looking at. I'm going to park it, let people accidentally mistype. They get hits on it. So eventually, like Google and all those people are going to say, this is a legitimate domain. And that's when it's going to actually go out and be able to defeat the reputation algorithms. And I'll show you a couple of tools we can use so you can see what that looks like. But then I just go and do some research on some people, and I can go out and I can start talking to people about, hey, first off, maybe I try to attack you internally. Hey, I'm your CEO. Go out and buy these gift cards. And they're actually not gift cards you're getting. You're sending money to a cyber criminal. Well, hey, even though we defeated that reputation algorithm on your email filter, if your people are trained, which I talked to you about earlier, they should actually be able to see, well, it did come from outside my domain. It didn't block it, but it came from outside my domain. So this really isn't my CEO. That's where training comes into play. When they can't do that, then they're going to go out and say, okay, let's go to your customers, your contractors, your suppliers, your vendors, everybody you communicate with regularly. And I'm going to convince them that I'm you, right? So maybe they send me money. Maybe they give me proprietary information. You may think this isn't common, but it is. I literally every other day get calls. I've had contractors for home builders who wired $50,000 to someone that they thought was who they normally do business with, because they just simply said, hey, we're changing some financial accounting information. I had a private equity firm that wired $1 million to someone that thought that it was their startup firm. This happens all the time. So our service is going to go out. It's going to find the literally thousands of variations that you have of your domain, because it can be anything, not just the one letter off. It can be your company billing, your company news, yourcompany.io, your company, anything. It could be a foreign letter E or a foreign letter I that looks like a US language E or I. That's going to register with GoDaddy in these groups as a whole new domain and look very, very legitimate. So you got to crawl the whole thing. You got to find these domains. We then monitor them, all the MX, the DNX records, all that. We know when they're shifting. We know when they turn malicious. When they do, we start taking screenshots continually so we can go to GoDaddy and those people and then take them down for you, usually within about 2 hours. But you can't take them down until you know that they're actually malicious and can prove that, because GoDaddy says, hey, it's a good domain. It's our domain. So the best you can do is monitor that. And if it looks suspicious, we have you blacklist that in your email services. But there is just a ton of things out here you can use on this. You know, I mentioned, hey, they'll stage these to see that they'll look right. Here's a free tool. Here's our friends at Corporate Data and Voice. Maybe they want to do a legitimate marketing campaign and not be criminals, right? Make sure their stuff isn't getting hung up in spam filters. So if I'm them even wanting to do a legitimate and I'm not a criminal, I got to score 26. I've got these areas that I'm going to keep working on when I have my equipment racked and stacked and running it through the email filters until this gets up into the 90s or 100%. So I know it gets through all the filters. So real easy to do that. Real easy to find lookalike domains. Here's a tool. That's another. All of these green check marks are things that I can buy right now for 15 bucks. These have actually been purchased. So someone might be aging them and using them for attack right now, right? And then we also prevent screen scraping of your code, as well as iframe attacks. So here's the last thing on that. So these criminals, when they create these fake domains, they'll scrape your code so the website will look exactly like your website and function like you. And if they've got enough hits, you might even find them on Google. You come to the wrong spot and you start entering your information. So here's the legitimate site. Here's the bad site. And it's going to function exactly the same. You go in, you enter your personal identifiable information in here, and you never realize that you're actually giving criminals your information. So our service prevents that as well. Could spend a lot of time on this, but we're running that to the bottom of our hour here, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We do appreciate that. I'm going to stop real quickly now. We do have time for questions if you have any. Otherwise, Christy, I guess I turn it back over to you.
Thank you both for all of that information. It was very insightful. Do we have any questions currently? Alrighty, well, we'll keep it to 2 o'clock. I will send out the recording for this after the event, and we will be following up with everyone after this. So if you do have additional questions or want to set up a meeting to talk to Jason and or Larry, happy to do that for you. So thank you all for joining this afternoon, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.